going to call together to order this April 4th, 2019 MAPC meeting, and we will start with public announcements.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. Copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby of this conference room. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please write your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the lobby. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please sign in on that same sheet. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available in the lobby. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Okay, with that, we will move on to agenda item number 1, approval of the prior MAPC meeting minutes from March 21st, 2019.
So move. Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Hartman, a second by Mr. Klossmeyer. Yes, I think we have Chuck, John McKay, and Joe Johnson abstaining, so.
Abstain.
Thank you, Joe. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. 10-03. I was looking at Scott to tell me that.
Abstain.
It was
10-03.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 2, subdivision committee recommendations. 2-1 is sub 2019-00004, final plat for Emerald Bay Estates, 4th edition. Would anybody on the commission like to hear this case? Seeing none, would anybody in the audience like to hear this case?
If not, I'd move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Joe Johnson and a second by Mr. Green. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries 14-0. I needed to count the people that were here today. We have everybody. That's fantastic. Okay, we have no vacation cases, so moving on to agenda item number 4. Case number CON 2019-00005 and ZON 2019-00008. Would anybody on the commission like to hear this case? Mr. Foster, we will hear this case. Agenda item number 5, case number CON 2019-00006, city conditional use to allow used vehicle sales on a property zoned LC. Does anybody on the commission like to hear this case? Oh, I'd like to hear this case as well, so we will hear this case. Moving on to agenda item number 6, case number CUP 2018-00052, city CUP amendment to Tallgrass East Commercial Community Unit Plan. Would anybody on the commission like to hear this case? We will hear this case. Agenda item number 7, ZON 2019-00007, city zone change from SF Single Family Residential to TF3 Two Family. Would anybody on the commission like to hear this case? Seeing none, would anybody in the audience like to hear this case? We will hear this case. Agenda item number 8, case number DER 2019-00003, Northeast Heights Neighborhood Comprehensive Plan Amendment.
Yeah, I think we.
Yeah, we'll have
we
to
are
hear that
hearing
case.
that one.
All right.
Yes, we are.
All right, moving back to agenda item number 4, and we have Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the commission, Dave here out with planning staff. This request concerns the property that's located at, let me get my notes here. Roughly at 29th and Greenwich. As you can see outlined in black is all the property that's included in this case, both the rezone or the zone case and the conditional use. The zone case is primarily to amend the protective overlay that applies to the property that was done several years ago. The conditional use is to address the proposed use of the property. What the applicant is proposing is a outdoor driving range facility complex. It's outlined in the staff report with respect of everything that they're doing. The staff report outlines a number of conditions and additional recommendations from staff. The biggest issues that they're talking about with the outdoor driving range, and I think there's a site plan that we can show. Maybe not. But anyway, what they're proposing to do is to create a driving range into this area north of the detention pond and fence that area with screening to hold the golf balls. One of the things that they're asking specifically is they ask for in their application the ability to put poles up that would be 170 feet in height. Their issues would be concerns about structures of that height, setbacks off of 29th Street, and also the fact that that's much higher than anything that's allowed currently in the restrictions. Also, this is within the airport overlay area around Javert Airport. And as we have outlined in our recommendation, they did provide an FAA study that showed they had been approved for structures up to 150 feet height. And so the recommendations that we made in the protective overlay were to modify it so a 30-foot side yard street side yard would still apply, which would be along 29th Street. So the poles would need to be 35 feet back from the right-of-way of 29th Street and limited to 150 feet in height, which is all the FAA has approved as of this date. I think the agents are indicating they will be asking for other issues here. They also asked to have the signage rights comply with the underlying zoning, which is LI, which is how the property is zoned. With the conditional use, there are some repeat standards applicable primarily regarding the height. There is also a requirement, because this will be a lighted driving range, that there be a lighting study provided to the MAPCD as well as the planning staff and be approved before any lighting occurs to assure we do not have any lighting bleeding off the property, and that the hours of operation be limited primarily to 10 p.m. on or 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturdays with the driving or with the outdoor activity, because among other things would be they intend to provide a multi-story structure that will have restaurant and make this an entertainment facility, and I'll let the agent address that a little more. So this did go to the District Advisory Board. No, it's not. Hold on. No, it will go to the District Advisory Board next week, sorry. I'm confusing it with the other case, so I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Richardson?
Dave, is the 170 feet limitation just for the poles itself? It would not allow a building that tall? Is that part of the
Correct.
protective overlay?
The height of the structure is limited to 55 feet. It's only the poles that we're talking about will go that high.
Thanks.
Other questions from the commission? Mr. Florence?
It had mentioned that they would have outside entertainment as far as bands and things. Do you know approximately where that will be and how it would affect? the
According
complex?
to the site plan that they had, we got late, and we may have to go see if we can get you guys a copy of it. But primarily it would be along, closer to the Greenwich side. They're going to have a parking lot here. The structure is kind of not a full U shape, but an odd shaped structure that will sit in here. And that's the area that most of that activity is going to occur. It's not going to be on this east side, which is close to the apartment complex. This is a medical facility, and of course we have commercial activity on this side of Greenwich. This is the new Stryker soccer complex further to the west.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you, Dave. Agent or applicant, if you'd like to step forward, you'll have 10 minutes, and if you'll state your name and address, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'm Kirk Miller. I'm the agent. My address 117 East Louis. We'll start with the question about the outdoor entertainment. It will be on the west side of the building, so you wouldn't even be able to see it from the apartments. David mentioned that we requested 170-foot poles. They have a consultant hired to determine the heights of the poles, and they've determined that 170 would probably be the max and probably maybe not even need to be that tall. But we're requesting 170. They've submitted to the FAA to try to get 170 from them also. And this would have to go to the city council too. So we have to get approved by the FAA before it'd go to city council for those heights. Also in the staff comments, it mentioned the signage. It says no portable or flashing signs. We'd like to be able to do LED, and I don't know if that's just something that needs to be clarified by staff, but, okay.
Yeah, you could do LED signs, just not flashing LED signs.
Right. Okay, that's fine. We just want to make sure we didn't get eliminated from LED signage. I know there was somebody that had a concern about go-kart track. We have a go-kart track shown on the site plan, and they were concerned about the noise, and if they were to actually do the go-karts, they would be electric go-karts. They wouldn't have all that noise. I know that was one of the concerns. And the other item that we'd like to address is we figured the hours of operation would be till about 11 in the evening. We would like to request that we push that an hour further up to like 12 in case they have a party or something like that where they need to keep it open a little bit later. The anticipated hours generally be closed about 11, but they've done a little bit of research on some other similar facilities, and sometimes they need to stay open till 12 for the activities that they do, for the outdoor activities and other operations. And otherwise, we are fine with the staff comments.
Question from the commission? Yes, Mr. Hartman?
Would the hours of operation apply to weekdays too, or just weekends?
We'd like to maybe do 11 on weekdays and 12 on weekends. Just an hour higher than what the staff report has.
Mr. Warren?
Kirk, assuming you get approval from the FAA, my only concern on the height is from a safety standpoint, who engineers what kind of pole, and will it withstand most tornado type winds, or what's the standard for this kind of a pole?
That's outside my area of expertise, but from what I understand, they're metal poles that have solid bases, and they're all over the country right now. Topgolf uses them. I think it's pretty much the same consultant they use to design these.
Other questions from the commission? Mr. Florence?
My concern is that noise from the outside entertainment bleeding over there, because you have a band outside, you can hear it for a long way. Is it any way or anything you can do to kind of counter that?
You're going to have a 3-story building between you and that area, so I really don't know how to answer that. I don't know if you could counter that or not.
Mr. Hartman?
Scott, is there a decibel level that they have to stay under?
There is, there's a noise ordinance, but they're not gonna trigger that. It's pretty high. From a suggested standpoint, you could require any, outdoor music to only loud, west of the building.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Like to make a motion?
Okay,
I would like to approve it at 170 feet if FAA approves that height, otherwise 150. I'd like to allow the extended period of time for entertainment venues on weekdays and Friday and Saturday. And what was the other request?
The two things I noted was the electric go-karts and the outdoor music west.
I think there's no problem with electric go-karts. And the LED lighting is allowed as long as it's not flashing. So that'd be my motion.
Second.
okay. I know, I was looking at Mr. McKay. So I have a motion by Joe Johnson, a second by Mr. Bill Johnson. And discussion. Mr. McKay, I know you have a comment.
The only comment I've got, it says just say go-kart, you mean making your motion electric go-kart, because that's what they said it was going to be.
Yes.
Electric go-kart.
And just
Mr.
for clarification, the suggestion that the music location be west of the building is included.
That was my question. We're going to add that to the motion on music on the west side?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Bill Johnson, are you okay with that? Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Foster?
I'm curious, is there a setback requirement relative to the golf portion of this on that east side in terms of these 170-foot poles and all that?
Yeah, the setback requirement for the poles is, the poles can be 80 feet in height at 0 setback, and then 1 foot of increased setback for every 2 feet in increase of height.
Great, thank you.
Hey, any other discussion? Mr. Green?
I don't have anything against the motion, but I think in the future, if we could have the staff report attachments actually included in the staff report. We didn't get anything on this one at all. Other
Dave
than,
says he's sorry back
yeah,
there.
I'll let it go this time.
Dave, he's gonna let that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 14-0. All right. Agenda item number 5, case number CON 2019-00006, and it looks like we have Philip up here to present to us.
Yes, good afternoon. Philip Zievenbergen, planning staff. Before you today is a conditional use to allow used vehicle sales on property located on South Broadway, just north of Harry. It's actually at the corner of Broadway and Boston. As you can see here, the site is almost half zoned as LC with a small sliver here in the middle with GC zoning, and the rest of the site is zone B multifamily. This conditional use would only apply to the area that is outlined, primarily the LC portion. The subject site currently is developed with a single-story masonry building, and it has a pawn shop. The pawn shop will continue to operate. The rest of the site, as you can see, so here's a pawn shop. The rest of the site is parking, and it is owned by the pawn shop and retained parking. The applicant would occupy a small portion of the building as their office. And according to their site plan, you can see here that they would only display and sell vehicles up in this northeast portion, reserving all the rest of this for the existing parking for the pawn shop. Under limited commercial, used vehicle sales are permitted as a conditional use, and the applicant has stated that there will be no vehicle maintenance on this site. Looking around the property, this is looking from the center of the property out west. The properties to the west are zoned SF5, and there's single-family homes that are constructed. To the north, you have Hamilton Middle School. This is looking at the site. Looking south, you can see the pawn shop that's in existence. And right here along the curb is where those display vehicles will be. This is looking south-southeast, right across the street from the subject property. These are two used vehicle sale lots right now. They have applicable conditional uses associated with them. And then looking northeast across the corner, you have a tire repair shop located there. This area is located within the established central area, which looks for infill development. It is slated to have commercial uses, but more importantly, this area is located within the South Central Neighborhood Plan that's been adopted in 2005. This plan labels this section as a commercial redevelopment node, and it's just north of what it considers a development or a neighborhood gateway. So you see here out at the intersection of Broadway and Harry is where they have the neighborhood gateway, and this pink rectangular area around there is what they're considering the commercial redevelopment node. The intent of this node is for medium intensity commercial uses such as destination retail, restaurant uses, and it should be developed in a node rather than on strip commercial pattern. According to the South Central Plan, the locational guidelines, it identifies things that are least desirable land uses as well as most desirable land uses, and it states that used car sale lots are specifically least desirable land uses for this area, and they're strongly discouraged. Along with this, as well as the fact that under its current zoning classification being limited to commercial, commercial uses can be permitted on the site without conditional uses. There's many things that could be done with this site for medium intensity commercial uses, as well as the fact that vehicle sales on the property could increase, have negative impacts with increased traffic, noise, light, and are generally considered visually unappealing. Based on these, staff recommendation is to deny this case. The case was heard at the DAB last night, and they are with staff recommendation for denial. They voted on that unanimously with one abstention. Should the commission want to approve this case, we recommend approval based on the conditions that are listed in your staff report. I'm not going to take the time to detail those out. And with that, I can stand for any questions.
All right, questions from the commission? Mr. Blick?
I just want to confirm this does not fall by the updated neighborhood plan.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to verify this does not, with the updated neighborhood plan, it doesn't fit for that plan.
Correct.
Okay.
The South Central Neighborhood Plan strongly discourages used car lots.
All right, thank you.
Philip, do you have any idea how many car lots are on Broadway?
Not off the top of my head. I did read the memo from the DAB meeting last night, and there was an individual at the DAB meeting last night who stated from their perspective, I don't know the accuracy of this information, but they stated something along like 27 along South Broadway. I don't know the extent of that area that they counted. That's the only number that I know of off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Mr. Warren?
Would, I'm trying to figure out this list of least desirable, would a pawn shop, where would a pawn shop fit in the desirability level?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I honestly did not review that in extent related to pawn shops, since this was related to used car lots. And this case is not whether or not this can be a pawn shop. The pawn shop is existing. It's whether or not a portion of this property can be used as a car lot.
I'm just looking at, is what's being proposed an upgrade? That's a question.
Other than the pawn shop is still going to be there, even if they use a portion of the lot to be a car lot.
Did you have an opinion on that?
I was just going to say the other least desirable land uses stated in that plan are nightclubs and motels.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, agent or applicant, if you'd please step forward, state your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes.
You can use the arrows on here if you want to work through things.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Dunn. I'm the managing member of Advantage Quality Cars. We're the agent. And I appreciate the time to, I had a whole speech prepared, which maybe I'll just spare that. I mean, let me do one thing. A quick history of Advantage Quality Cars. Did I say 1238 East Douglas, my address? Oh, never mind. Okay, so just FYI, Advantage Quality Cars was founded by Rent-A-Center back in the 90s. As you know, Rent-A-Center was sold in the late 90s, moved to Dallas. At that point, they got rid of the car business, the furniture business, everything but the rental business. And myself and four of the Wichita businessmen ended up buying what was left of Advantage Quality Cars, the Rent-A-Center deal. We've operated it for now 20 years. We're located at 1238 East Douglas. Does this sound like an ad? I'm sorry. So we're at East Douglas, and over the years we've had multiple satellite locations. And what we've concluded is a large one like we have on East Douglas, we're going to have 150 cars, works pretty well because of the economies of scale. When we start putting out these satellite lots, we end up with a lot of staff, a lot of management issues. So I got the bright idea, knowing the owners of AOK down there on South Broadway, we could establish a toehold on a high car throughway, Broadway. I mean, Broadway and Kellogg, let's face it, those are where people buy cars in this town for the most part, the vast majority. And I thought, well, what if we could co-locate with, say, a pawn shop? Like I said, I know the fellows who own and operate that. We could have some synergies of staff, security, and if any of you have been by our store, we typically have late model cars. In fact, my vision here is just 10 to 20 late model cars. Think a 2016 Nissan Sentra, Toyota Corolla, affordable, parked out in the north side of the parking lot, in the area that they suggested. And we could engage in that market without the expense and the overhead of going out and renting a lot. I don't think there'd be, and I understand there's 26 plus car lots on South Broadway. This isn't so much another used car lot as a micro store, kind of a shared use environment. And I think AOK has some others where they co-locate businesses. Again, we're sharing staff, we're sharing technology, Wi-Fi, et cetera. We would improve or fix the lights. There's existing lighting out there, and for security purposes, we'd want that lighting to work. I don't envision a fence, because quite frankly, if someone's going to steal your car, I have learned the hard way, they're going to steal your car. So as long as they're out there, displayed nicely, because it doesn't do me any good to not display them nicely, displayed nicely, keys are secure inside the building, we should be good. We're not going to do repairs. I have no interest in repairing down there. This isn't going to be a little shack with 6 or 7 ratty cars sitting on blocks. We'll have 10 to 20 nice vehicles. If I can sell 10 vehicles a month off that with that overhead expenditure, it should work nicely. Again, it's a micro store. obviously I didn't invent it, it just came to me. And that's just a very unique location, being that it's on Broadway. I know the guys that own the store, and it has actually the space to put 10 to 20 cars without influencing the parking for the car lot. And really, with the kind of traffic we get, even at our big store, I mean, maybe we get 20 people a day drive on looking for cars. It's not like it's going to be, well, I would love for it to be a flood of people coming on, but I don't see more than, 10 to 20 people coming in a day, if that, on an already busy street. So, certainly, whatever questions, that's mine.
Hey, questions from the commission? I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody from the audience who would like to speak on this case? Okay, if you'll step forward, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Adam Barlow Thompson. I live at 1121 South Waco in the neighborhood here. And I'm speaking against changing this and putting another car lot in our neighborhood. I have 3 reasons that I want to point out. One has been mentioned, that the 2005 neighborhood plan asked that this would be a least desirable business for the area. We are in the process of updating that neighborhood plan right now. And from the effort that we've had with city staff and a consultant that's helping us with that, we've had more momentum around engaging residents in this area than we've ever had. And it's a really exciting moment, and that momentum includes being able to target special areas in the neighborhood that have some potential. There's not a ton of those, but this is one of them. The intersection of Broadway and Harry becomes a very important intersection as we look forward to what we want our neighborhood to be. It already has some established and businesses that are desirable there, and this is not one of those that we want to include in that lot. In fact, in the new neighborhood plan that will be developed, especially the residential part of that area within that lot is something that we have paid attention to and are looking at. And so you have residents excited about this plan and engaged in it, and are asking that you help us to keep that momentum going in the same direction. There's also, of course, many opportunities for car lots on that. Not only are the ones that are existing, there are spaces for lease and for sale that are, you can see them from that location. So that if there is a desire for it, it can happen. But we, as part of the neighborhood association and the people working on the plan, ask that you would not permit this request. Thank you.
Adam, can you stay there just a second? Any questions from the commission? Mr. Richardson.
Adam, as you pointed out, there's a number of car lots already there, a couple across the street. But, in some ways, a car lot's kind of a placeholder, and part of it is, the ones across the street are fenced. Kind of looks like they're protecting against something. The applicant has said he doesn't intend to fence it.
Mm-hmm.
Has the neighborhood explored ways to make this land use acceptable, certainly frankly, the pawn shop could fill the lot with cars that are doing business there, and you still have cars parked on the lot. I would encourage you to encourage ways to, for whatever, landscaping, I don't know, no fences, whatever it is, to make what may well be just a placeholder land use. It's still vacant land. It's still available, frankly, for development, to somehow integrate that in the plan, because what we're faced with is either yes or no.
Right.
We don't have any other way to go, and I don't think, maybe Scott can weigh in on this, maybe there's other things that we could do that haven't been proposed by the applicant, but because we get these requests not only in this neighborhood but others in terms of ways to make this a compatible use, if you will. It's a pretty benign use. You don't have loud music. You don't have people staying up to 1 o'clock in the morning. There's a lot of things about it that, frankly, is if you got to live next door to something, not very many people buy cars after 6 o'clock at night. I mean,
Yeah.
and so is there a way, you know, we've kind of struggled with this, but to find a way, and I would encourage you to say, we could live with this if, and I don't know what that is, not been involved in those discussions, but you know, we keep having these.
Yeah, if I
these
could
these
offer a
requests.
response to that.
Sure.
You know, I've been to this meeting before and asked for a car lot to not be approved, and it was, and there were some extenuating circumstances that made sense. What I'm excited about right now in South Central neighborhood is that I get that it's a yes or no for you all, but before I was always asking you just to say no to something, and all we had was resistance to stuff we didn't like. What I'm saying is the neighborhood plan is doing the things you're asking right now. And so now I'm saying, I want you to say yes to the neighborhood plan, which in this moment asks you to vote no on this particular zoning issue. Because the neighborhood plan is exciting, and it does target that space to say, here's what we wish this space could be. And we're going to do work to implement that. We're gaining citizen involvement so that we can put pressure on city council and y'all and people like you to and developers to come in and use that space. And it helps us when the space is a vacant lot, or a parking lot right now. It looks like an asset in waiting. When it is a used car lot, it looks like a hassle for somebody to come in and flip that around. So I do think that request that you're making is one that we are working on with the neighborhood plan right now.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, thanks, Adam.
You up?
Oh, Mr. Florence?
What time frame are we looking to have that plan done?
So we will have it by end of July. It'll be finished. And then at within the city or within the neighborhood, we're going to be hosting kind of kickoff events that will be happening at the end of summer. A lot of them will be a part of the neighborhood night out as a way to gathering resident support around that plan.
Any other questions for Adam? Thank you.
You bet.
Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay, I will bring it back to the agent for a 2-minute rebuttal. Done?
I would, again, I'd just like to reiterate, it's a new concept, micro store. I'm not sure in the plan that the gentleman was discussing, I mean, I understand it's private property, and we've made an agreement with these folks, subject to approval, of course, of the Planning Commission, to be able to sell cars there. So I don't know how all that fits in with the neighborhood plan, if we're talking about that specific lot, but I don't see this as a negative for the area, given the kind of cars we sell, the lighting we're going to have, and the lack of noise and signage and so forth. Thank you.
Other questions from, can you just, Mr. Warren?
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
sometimes we get looking for compromise, trying to figure out something that works for you and doesn't hurt the neighborhood. My mind's going, one of the problems with used car lots is they get filled up with way too many cars. And then the second thing is that the quality of the cars are such that it makes it look like a dump. So my question would be is if this were to be approved, would you be willing to limit the number of cars that you would display on this lot to 12 cars? And would you also be willing to limit the age of the cars to no more than 10 years of age?
I would prefer 20, because I don't know what number does work to drag people in. 10 years, I'm trying, probably the average age of the vehicles on our current lot are 4 or 5 years old. Again, I don't think 10 years would be an issue, no. And believe me, if any of you happen to drive by 1238 East Douglas to Advantage Quality Cars, I think you'll see the kind of cars we sell. I have no interest in selling really nice cars on 1238 East Douglas and junky cars on Broad. That's not our business model. Our business model is to sell cars that when they go off the lot, we don't have to worry about them breaking down and causing the customer a problem.
You can understand the fear of the neighborhood.
Oh, I completely understand that. And if nothing else, I would say that from my perspective, this will be one of there's some nice ones down there. You know, I've been up and down Broadway, and there's some folks, I don't want to disparage the other dealers down there, but for the most part, yeah, they can look pretty bad. Like I said, I've seen shacks with cars laying around. That's not our MO, because our name, Advantage Quality Cars, is going to be there. And so it's got to be as good as it is on Douglas, or we're just running backwards.
Joe Johnson.
I'd like to ask our attorney, Mr. Van Zandt, is that permitted to have that kind of restriction? It is? And how would that be enforced?
Not very well.
Mr. Richardson.
About the issue of fencing, could we agree you're not going to fence this lot in like some of these others?
No, I have no interest in making my car lot look like a prison. And and that's a little disturbing to me. You go up and you see all those, and I think it sends a bad message. Again, cars now, if they're going to steal it, they're going to steal it. And I do see that there's something in the regs about having something that around the perimeters to keep the cars from going onto the sidewalk. As I was reading through that in the zoning requirements, so if we're required to put up, and I don't know what's there, either the short posts or something that keeps the car from, we're happy to do whatever.
Doesn't encroach on the sidewalks.
Yeah, I mean, but no, I have no interest in putting if I have to put a big fence up, I'm out of there.
I'll go back to the person who's at the DAB meeting. There might be 26 or 27 car dealerships, but it's not between Broadway and here, Kellogg and here. It's further south, way south. There's a lot of, probably not over 3 or 4.
They were talking about from Kellogg and Perry.
27
No.
cars?
Kellogg and
No way in the world.
all the way down.
No,
All the
it
way.
wasn't all the way down.
It's not
Okay,
27.
that's beside the point. Plus also, we can do a conditional use for 3 years and have them renew it. That might fit in with the South Neighborhood Plan, so you just have a piece of vacant ground sitting there. And say, all right, we'll give you a conditional use for 3 years. They got to come back. If South Central people have already come up with some kind of a program to use that ground, then it can be, it's over with. So because you're not building a building, they're just utilizing the parking lot.
Make that motion.
Mr. Blick,
Well, I'm just putting up for discussion.
let me get Mr. Blick first, because
Mr. Dunn, I drove by this facility, this parking lot today, and coming up from Broadway, MacArthur, all the way up Broadway, I counted 5 empty car lots
Yes.
that are open for lease.
Yes.
Have you looked at any other properties that are up and down? Because I'd hate to see that this become a car lot and then 2 or 3 years down the road, you decide, it didn't work out for me, and now there's somebody else that's going to be there and it's going to be another car lot. Have you looked at other properties along Broadway?
Yes, we have. And again, the uniqueness of this space is we have an existing business, and I think AOK has done a great job of upgrading their buildings. They look nice. They're very presentable. They are willing to try this with us, kind of this micro store concept. Pawn shops in the past and various stores have tried to sell cars, and what they found out is they're really good at being a pawn shop, but they really are bad at selling cars. We're really good at selling cars. I don't want to have to open a multi-use deal, so we can co-locate. And so again, this is a very unique location in that there's an existing business, and it actually has the space where we can put 10 to 20 cars or 12, whatever the number is, and then share a lot of the infrastructure. So I don't have to staff it 12, 14 hours a day just for someone to say hi. I'll have a salesman there, maybe a business development person. If I go to any other place, I've got a whole new world of issues, which we've done in the past. I've got people to open it, to close it, it just takes on a whole new world, and it's not worth the effort for a satellite store, in our opinion. So again, this is kind of a micro store concept. and all the stars lined up with A-OK, the owners, the physical space as far as having the space for the cars, and then it's on a high-traffic thoroughfare where there are lots of used car shoppers.
I have Mr. Daly.
Yeah, and a comment about your 10-year-old. There's classic cars that are worth a heck of a lot more than a new car, and those need to be considered. Are you interested in perchance a classic car showing up as a?
Not really. Occasionally we have those. We stumble on them. We reserve those for our show. Well, we don't have another satellite lot. I truly, I mean, if a 10-year restriction was prerequisite, I could live with that because, again, kind of the bread and butter of this program is going to be a 2 or 3-year-old Toyota Corolla or Nissan Sentra, something that's inexpensive, reliable, gets great gas mileage, because that's what our customers need.
Okay, just so you're satisfied with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. No, and I appreciate that.
You get more turnover with those than you would a classic car.
And that's what we're trying to do, but.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure you were satisfied with that 10-year.
Mr. Warren.
Sometimes I don't even like my own ideas. I like Mr. McKay's idea of a conditional use with a 3-year time limit for, to renew. There, in the staff report, there were 6 items that if we were to approve it, there were 6 conditions. Have you read those in this report, and are you okay with those?
I think we can't do one of these wavy arm guys, was that the thing, or something like, we don't do that. I think as I read through it, we plan to rotate, AOK already has an existing LED sign, and they plan to just put us on the rotation. We might have a sign up on the side of the building. We're certainly not going to do rental trailers, motorcycles, again, none of that. We will, whatever improvements we're going to do, they will be done before we start selling cars. By the way, we can't even sell cars there until we get a supplemental license from the state of Kansas, which we can only get once it's approved zoning-wise, and they won't let us do anything. Until we have all this done. As far, we plan to not disrupt the traffic flow for AOK because obviously that doesn't benefit them. Off-street parking spaces shall be provided. We won't display anything off-street or, off-street parking. Well, I guess I don't know on that according to, I assume that's a number of parking spaces for off-street for that business. Is that what number 4 is?
Correct.
I mean, they've got a jillion parking spots behind, so I'm assuming that would be okay. Of course, we'll always comply with all the laws. So yeah, all of those look good.
I'll make an attempt at a motion unless you're ready to. Go ahead.
Make a motion. I make a motion.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's okay. Okay. Mr. Johnson, Joe Johnson down here has had his hand up, so that's fine. Go ahead. He said, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to second his motion if he made it, but I wanted 2 restrictions on it. And I was going to say I'd like to have the motion include an average of 16 cars and an average of 5 years in age.
Agree to that, but I'll make a motion, try a motion, that we do a conditional use for 3 years. We got, and use the 6 items that the staff put in there if it's approved. I don't think we can tell a guy how he can do with his business about whether it's a 10-year-old car or a 5-year-old car or whatever it might be. That'll be my motion, because he.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. McKay, a second by Mr. Warren, a hand up by Mr. Richardson.
John, would you include in that not to be fenced?
Yeah, that wasn't one of the requirements.
Would you include in your motion that the lot would not be fenced?
Well, I'll make, that's fine.
He didn't want a fence.
No, he doesn't want a fence.
I understand.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That wasn't one of the requirements, so I didn't throw it in.
All right, and I'm going to open up the floor for discussion.
What that does, that gives the South Central people a chance to work on the thing. It doesn't give you vacant, that used to be a Safeway store, that pawn shop was, years and years ago, when I was a kid, and that's been a long time ago. I've been there.
It was before cars.
That's true, probably.
I want to make a quick comment, and then I'll get to the rest of the comments. You know, for the past 7 or 8 years, I have sat on several different planning committees. And what's really bothersome to me is that we set and we develop these plans for the community, or for areas of the community. And we decide what's most desirable for those communities and or those areas of the community, and how do we clean those up? And this is the South Central Committee is one of those that the South Central Neighborhood Planning Committee is one of those that I'm sitting on. And I'm a South Sider, so I drive down Broadway day in and day out. I drive down Broadway and I look at how we've used Broadway. And I'm continue to be very concerned that if we continue to go against and allow what's least desirable, we will never be able to change the south area of Wichita. And so I just want to, I'm going to express that here publicly today, because I do continue to be concerned. And for that reason, I will not be able to support this motion. So let's get to the rest of the statements. Mr. Joe Johnson.
I guess I would agree with you, except I think in this case it's prevailing that since there's already a functional business there that allows cars to park there, I have no problem with it.
I think parking there as opposed to having cars there 24/7 is different.
If there's a quick trip for 24/7, it'd be the same thing.
Mr. Bill Johnson.
Well, basically, I mean, there's been lots of meetings, lots of committees, lots of things. A lot of that never comes to pass. The same thing with the South neighborhood. That may be passed, it may not. It may be 5 years before you see it. It's not in effect today. The other thing is, I think the 3 years ideal. I've been by his other facility, and it's upper end type of used cars, and the most of them that I see on South Broadway probably don't fall into that category. So I think the 3 years is ideal. And 20 cars is fine, and let him run his business.
Mr. McKay.
Something just popped in my head. He said he had to get approval from the state. So the 3 years is from his approval of the state.
He'll have to, yeah, it's a state license to.
Okay, so that's what, not from today or when the state, but when he gets his license from the state.
The state requires that the city sign off on the license and indicate that the address that's being licensed permits the use.
He's got to come back in 3 years anyhow, and then we'll know more about what's happened to the South City.
Mr. Blick.
I have some problems with this just because we had similar situation with the Quit Trip down on South Broadway. I understand the situation with the Quit Trip where there can be nothing else that's there. You have probably about 5+ car lots that have been abandoned that are up for lease. There is a neighborhood plan that is in place since 2005 that says you cannot have this. The DAB board voted unanimously that they do not want this. The community came and spoke today. They do not want this. But then we go and we reverse it just because this person knows somebody that wants to put a car lot on an empty lot. I think that we're doing injustice for the neighborhood association and injustice for the neighborhood plan, and I am against this.
Other discussion. Mr. Daly.
If there's so many car lots that are available to be something, they could be something else. And if they can't attract these other businesses that the South End wants, why should this one? So, there's other spaces for what they desire, and they're not taking up the challenge either. So I can support the motion.
Florence.
This is unique in the sense that there is an already established building there. And if this model don't work, it'll go back to what it is today, and it won't be an abandoned car lot. It just be part of that existing building. And that is the reason why I have tendency maybe to support it.
Mr. Foster.
I just want to echo that. You know, this is unique. If you could go back in time relative to all those others that are existing, this would be an ideal model that you'd want to consider for a used car lot. Second thing is, I frankly think if a grander plan comes along for that particular node, this use can go away very simply with some paperwork and driving some vehicles away. So the way it's presented, I support the motion.
Mr. Dool.
I think the issue is that area of Wichita going to be better off or worse off if this motion were approved? And I support the motion because I think there's a net gain there.
Other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Aye. Yep. So motion carries 12-2. All right, moving on. Agenda item number 6, CUP 2018-00052, City CUP Amendment to Tallgrass East Commercial Community Unit Plan. Dave? There you
Madam
go.
Chairman, thank you very much. Dave Yearwood again with staff. This is a request to modify the conditions relative to primarily the one parcel, which is mostly parcel 4B. It also includes now part of parcel 4H. The primary change is to allow the use for a self-storage facility. This is unique in that it will be a completely enclosed. This is not the type of self-storage we've seen in many other places around the community. The modification will address both the use and also the overall size of the building. The height originally was proposed to be 45 feet. That has now been reduced down, according to the plan, it's at 34 feet 11 inches, which puts it that far underneath the 35-foot height limit that's already in place. The property is zoned LC. This is a part of the Tallgrass East Commercial CUP. For those that are familiar, this is the vacant land north of the old Granite City that used to be on the east side at 21st and Webb. This shows the future land use of the area, residential and employment mix. This is the proposed site plan that's been provided by the applicant that shows the size of the building, the location. There are people here representing the company that will explain exactly how they work. Essentially, these are, it's a drive-through facility that they drive through the building, and all the activity occurs inside of the building. There is no outdoor activity associated with the business and anybody that's leasing space within the storage complex. This shows the existing CUP. You can see parcel 4B, and they are now taking part of parcel 4F. And so the recommendation and approval would be to allow the use, modify the CUP drawing to accommodate both the new lot lines and the details regarding the plan. This is a picture looking northwest at the site. This is the private drive that comes in off of Webb, north of the Granite City facility, and I'm sitting back past the island in the area. Looking back in northwest, you can see the wall along the north side of the building or the property that exists now. This is looking east, and Optilife has built a building on further east. It's roughly sitting about this location. This is looking south into the parking lot, and you can see the old Granite City building that's still there. Not old, the old place where Granite City was. Looking north along Webb at the entrance and looking south, and those are the pictures that we've got. I guess, yep. There's the application. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Florence.
Is this facility be similar to the one that we permitted on the west side?
Yes.
Captain Mays.
Mr. Green? Nope.
He just took he was reading my notes.
Oh, he was? Okay. Mr. McKay? Okay. Mr. Richardson?
Hey, would you detail for us the changes they're asking for in the community unit plan? I think one of them is the warehouse use, is that correct?
The warehouse use, the changes will also address for the new parcel, the percentage of lot coverage, the gross floor area that's proposed, as well as the maximum area of the building footprint on the property.
It's primarily the use and the
size of the
footprint
building.
and the size of the building. Did you speak to the parking that's needed here? Did you talk about that?
Well, I didn't really speak to it because this is such an unusual situation. It really doesn't generate much parking.
Right.
They're showing, and you can see on the site plan that they've provided, there are parking stalls that will be on the west side of the building. Within the CUP and the plat, there's a building setback off of Webb for 70 feet. There's also a setback off the north property line, and their plan now complies with all those requirements. And I know the applicant will probably address and in their presentation talk about what they presented at the DAB meeting, which was that in addition to the facade views that you'll see on the structure, they're also improving and enhancing the amount of landscaping along the north side of the property.
Well, I remember on the one out west, we made an exception to the parking requirements. Is that right? Are we doing that here as
We
well?
might, no, this does not trigger any exception, parking requirements that I'm aware of.
Okay.
We discussed the parking, but we did require the code required number.
We
of parking
did
on the
out
west side.
west? Okay, all right, okay. So, and we're not asking for an exception here on the parking requirements?
No.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Johnson?
Area in front to the west, is that drainage retainage, or is that pad sites? That open area?
In this area?
No.
That's just going to be parking lot and then just grass area. There's no ability to put other buildings on there.
Is there no,
Oh, Joe, can you speak in your microphone,
is there no
please?
drainage requirement here as far as?
There will be a drainage plan that will have to be complied with. Most of the drainage will come back and move back towards some drainage structures that are existing further to the east.
Other questions from Mr. Dool?
I'm also going to abstain from this because we live very near that area, and Slauson develops land around our house and manages our homeowners association, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Dave? All right, thank you, Dave. Oh, ma'am, you'll have to wait. Okay, sorry. Can I ask the agent or applicant to please step forward and state your name and address, and you will have 10 minutes.
Click on this.
Great, thank you so much. Hello, I'm Brody Glenn with Centennial American Properties. My address is 935 South Main Street, Greenville, South Carolina. Thank you again for your time to let us come in front of you. As Dave mentioned, we're working on a very similar facility at 21st and Webb, and I'll give you just kind of idea of the process that we've been through. At Mays, there was no residents. We actually couldn't even find a board that we could meet with. At Webb, we did, and so we went and met with the board of the Tallgrass Association. We met with them just before Christmas, got their recommendations, and we had the board was in support. We came to the DAB meeting, and there was a number of neighbors that came to that meeting that had concerns about heights and other things, and I'll go through them. And so we
we stopped our process, as we said when we were here before y'all the first time. We really believe in the process, and the process works. And so we stopped our process to sit down and work with the neighbors to figure out how do we make this project better. And the process works, and I think at the end of the day, we have a project that's better. And I'll go through it, and I want to ask one question real quick, Dave. Are we asking for a conditional use, or is it, it's not? CUP amendment, so it's not in the CUP use now. Gotcha. So this is the building, very similar to Mays. We're still using the Nichi-High material. We are using a more gray material so that we can match the OptiLife. Well, a couple of things that you'll notice on this elevation, one of the big concerns we heard from the neighbors was the height of the building. And the buildings, it was 45 feet tall or so in the rear. Obviously, the residence is right there. And so we developed actually for this site a custom proto. And what we did was we lowered the building to under 35 feet, 34.11, to the deck. And we did that by, on most of our stores, the first floor is 16 feet. And that allows us to have 13.5 or 13.6 clear for trucks to pull through the building. So here what we did was we eliminated from 16 feet to 12 feet on the first floor. And then we eliminated the storage directly above the pull-through. So it's basically 2 stories there. And that allowed us to bring the height of the building down to that 35-foot maximum that the code requires. The other thing that we did is the residents did not want people looking down or have the ability to look down into their neighborhood. And so we took off all the windows on the north side, and also restricted the lighting there to make sure we wouldn't have any bleed off for one, but also, we don't need a lot of lighting, just enough lighting at night for security. So the top there is the rear, or the east side, and then the bottom is the north side. You can see all the windows and lights are taken off of that. So this is the most up-to-date site plan. Then Dave, the plan you had up there is a little different. We'll make sure we coordinate that. As you can see, there is a pull-through just like there is a maze. Through our conversations with the neighbors, that pull-through will be towards the south. Once again, trying to eliminate as much lighting as we can. 98%, 99% of the loading will be done internally. The garage doors, there'll be a garage door on each side of the pull-through. Those will close behind you, and so you'll be contained there. So from a noise standpoint, we should be a really good neighbor. As far as parking goes, we've got one row of parking there. There's been some questions about, why are we not moving our building further up here? It really has to do with this access point. We feel like we need access there at the front of the store. And if we slide any further, it's going to hinder us having the ability to have that access point. Also, I don't know if y'all can see here, we moved the dumpster as well to the south side to get that away from the neighbors. Trying to think some other things that we did. I'll go through landscaping in just a moment. Uh-oh, I got turned sideways. And I don't know how to turn this, and I won't try to while I'm up here, but you can see the view corridor there. If you go from the south or down up, it should be turned. It shows you what the view corridor is, and I'll show you the landscaping that is in reference, that tree is in reference of. So this is the landscaping. So when you have uses like this, and we deal with this in different developments all over the country, quite honestly, there's a lot of different ways to do it. One, which I think is needed, is some kind of barrier. Luckily, there is already a barrier there. There's an 8-foot wall that was built sometime before us. The other way is landscaping. Landscaping does a lot of things. It helps with the light. It helps with the noise. It also helps with the view corridors. And so once the neighbors came to us, that was the first thing we did is find a local landscape architect that could help us build a plan that would work, and not just work in 6 or 7 years. Lots of times you see developments and you get these trees that are 2-inch caliber. And so we hired a local landscape architect and worked through some renderings of what the development will look like within the first year. We actually took those to the city. We did 2 different renderings. We took those to the residents and actually let them pick which one they liked the best, which, here it is. And this is the landscaping, this is what it will look like within a year, 18 months or so. And so we're putting in heavy caliber trees. We're beefing up the landscape there. And these trees will be like this year round. Even though the other plan that we had showed more evergreens, these, I didn't know that oaks, there was an oak tree that kept its leaves all year. Learned that on this deal, but so this oak tree does keep its leaves all year. You can see the wall in the rear as well, and then we'll have landscaping underneath that wall, underneath the larger trees there, just shrubs and whatnot. This is the other plan. No, excuse me, this is the plan looking towards the north. So this looks, one of them is looking due north. This is looking, I call it northwest, northeast. So that is our proposal today. I understand, I want you all to know, I do understand the residents' concerns. There are a number of uses that are allowed out here. When you hear self-storage, just as first time I came in front of y'all, you think about the guy that lives on site with the dog and whatnot. This is totally different than anything that y'all have seen. And while the building is tall, it's 35 feet, any building can be built there at 35 feet. And we really have tried to sit down with the property owners and the neighbors to work with them to make this as good a development as possible. As far as noise, there'll be very little noise, very little traffic. We will not operate after 10 o'clock at night. It will be manned from 8:30 to 5:30. So I just want y'all to know, and the neighbors, the process has worked in this case, and I think we've got a better development for all of us than we had 45 days ago. So thank you for your time, and I'll be here for any questions. Or does anybody have any questions?
Questions from the commission? All right, Mr. Glenn, thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? If you will step forward, state your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Levi Hobart. My address is 2327 Vinegate. This is my residence right here. So you have to excuse me here. I'm short of casting my ballot every 2 years. This is my first attempt at civic participation, so I'll do the best I can. The two main concerns that I have with the storage unit, as it relates to our neighborhood, as it relates to our community, is the crime that is involved with storage units. For me, that's not something that's up for debate. There are peer-reviewed, researched, peer-reviewed university studies that show storage units increase crime, and with an increased crime, also decreases property value. And so I think that for me, I could give you stories of coming from a single parent household and the struggles that I had to work and deal with growing up, and how hard I've had to work to get to a place where I could afford a place not only for myself, but for my little 6-year-old daughter, my little 12-year-old daughter, and how important that is to us to be able to provide that type of lifestyle and make it better for my children. So again, like I said, the crime to me is non-disputable. It's peer-reviewed research that shows storage units increase crime. Crime decreases property values. And so when I got here today, I looked through the staff report, and the two things that I have a concern with, I guess, primarily are on page 6 and page 7. Number 3, it says the extent to which the removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby neighborhoods. A proposed self-storage warehouse is inconsistent with existing conditions in the area, which we recommended condition mitigate impacts to the neighborhood. I disagree with that. The one example that was given was the OptiLife, which is a community-based local health facility for local residents. This is a storage facility that can bring in any sort of tenant from anywhere, not only in Wichita. I could give you anecdotal evidence of drug manufacturing that happens in storage units all the time. Those are the ones that have outdoor access, let alone ones that have completely enclosed access. So, so I would disagree with point 3 on the staff, on the staff report. And then also relative to gain to public health and safety, approval of the request represents a gain to the public in that it contributes to the area's long-term economic opportunity and expands its tax base. I don't know that any business that would go in here that would be more detrimental to, like I said, the crime and the property values, than not to mention have a detrimental impact on the other businesses that will be then existing in the same area of this location as well. So for those reasons, I couldn't object anymore to this type of structure going in. There is also, yeah, sorry.
Time is up.
Yep.
Questions? Mr. Joe Johnson.
Crime studies you refer to.
Oh, yes, use your microphone,
Sorry.
please.
The crime studies you refer to, does that differentiate between the type of storage units?
It does not.
Thank you.
Who else was had questions over here? No, was there somebody else that had a question?
Sorry, I would like to say, I didn't specify that, so I don't know for sure that it does or does not, rather than say that it doesn't.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Ma'am, if you'll state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Janie Kawawa. I live at 2355 North Stony Brook Court for the past 25 years. I'd like to ask first, how many other people in the audience are here about this issue? Neighbors? Okay, we don't have as many. This is the 4th meeting I have been to about this issue. First 2 at the Edgemore Public Library. We averaged about 8 to 10 people. We had another meeting at our area clubhouse attended by about 40 people. All of us were in opposition to this behemoth. I know that the outside edge is supposed to be 35 feet, but the looked like above the windows was a lot higher. And I had heard someone say, who had looked at a plan, that there was a big point in the middle that was going to be higher besides the air conditioning ducts. So there will be other things higher. And even 35 feet. There are houses right at behind that wall that have swimming pools that will now not have any afternoon sun now, or for the children playing out there. I cannot believe that will not impact the resale of their houses in the future. And I do appreciate the concessions made for the height and the no windows and the other ones mentioned, but still, we want to know why here? There is so much empty land for construction in commercial areas along Greenwich, not to mention along 21st Street from Webb to Greenwich, where this would seem to fit in much better than having this big giant wall for us to look at behind our houses. And I would like to ask, you have mentioned a similar building in Mays Road where there was no community board to talk to. I would like to know, you said there were 2 buildings. Is the other one also, does it also abut a residential area? Or is ours the first one, rather than in this busy business corridor? And so that has lots of traffic along there. So, and I do appreciate that your business talked to the Tallgrass East Homeowners Association Board. Unfortunately, that board abdicated all responsibility to notify any of the people, the homeowners. We knew nothing about this until we got the letter like a week before the meeting at the first meeting in February at the library. There were no signs up. One of our neighbors took 60 photographs around the area, and there were no signs up that were supposed to be there for 60 days, I am told. So it just seems like a lot of corners have been cut. There have been concessions made, but we still ask, it's going to be a 1.5 lot sizes, so it just does not match or blend in with the other buildings there. Granite City, I am told, is going to become a medical facility, and that size-wise, it matches in, and the business facade too. So why can't it be something similar? Why this big giant behemoth that will block our view?
Your time is up. Can you stay at the podium just 1 minute, and let me see if there's any questions from the commission, please? Questions from the commission? Okay. Oh, Mr. Hartman.
When you moved in this property to the south, was it zoned commercial at that time?
It had been empty for the 25 years I lived there until they started putting up the OptiLife and those things. But again, we had no idea what was there. I mean, there was the bank on the corner and then Granite City, and that was all for the past, like, 20 years. Something, and
Do you know when
Building
the
frenzy
TUP was
now.
approved for that?
It's been zoned at least that long, yeah.
For the residential?
I don't know. It's been zone commercial since I've been here, and I moved here in 1990.
But my question, could that be answered? The second facility, not the one in Mays, but you said there are two on the other side of town. Does that also abut a residential area?
He'll be able to answer that when he does his rebuttal.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Green, do you have a question?
That's what he's.
Nope, microphone's not working.
Oh, his mic's not working. Mr.
We did
Joe
that on
Johnson, would
purpose.
you share your mic?
No, I didn't have a question. I was.
That's what he was gonna say, I think.
Respond to
Okay.
the applicant, letting him know that he would have rebuttal time.
Okay, is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Sir, if you'll step forward, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Ken LeBlanc, 2349 North Stony Brook Court, Wichita. My home lot does not directly abut the property, but I will have a kind of a side-eye view. The people from Continental, South Carolina, have been really gracious as far as coming out, trying to concern our needs. I like their model, their program. However, I do not like the lot that it is situated in. All of us are within the scope of looking at the YMCA out here. That is a type building that is going to be put right behind our neighborhood. Now, that building's probably greater than 35 foot tall, but that is the behemoth that we're referencing here. I think that they have a good model, but it just does not feel right within the scope of what they're trying to put it in. If they move a mile east, a mile west, up there by MC, over there north of the Coke land at 21st and Webb, those are really spaces that could be used for this type of facility. This building needs room to breathe. Now, one of the problems that we're having is the scope of the building. They say 35 foot. Nobody that I've talked to can get a handle on 35 feet. And just the diameter, the rectangular, that the pad that the building's going to sit on, we're all just kind of miffed. So if this goes forward, I would like them, the Continental people, put some type of pole up 35 feet, like a orange flag, and stake out just a perimeter of the building so we can see what we're dealing with in the short term. I drove out there the other day. They've got concrete all torn up, so I don't know what they're doing out there. But so we're the people that are impacted are struggling to kind of come to COPE's terms with the size of the building. Plus, the people impacted were not informed. Our neighborhood was not informed by our homeowners association on any level about the Continental building going up, the storage building. So, like I said, they've been really generous about coming out, trying to address our needs. A lot of the other things with the vegetation, the blocking of the building, but it just, if you go out there, it just does not feel. All you have to do is look at the YMCA and say, would I want that at the backside of my neighborhood? Thanks.
Thanks, Kenny. Can you stay at the podium for a second and let me
What
get these
YMCA are
questions?
you talking about?
One right across over here, or Central YMCA, it's rectangular.
Downtown Y.
Oh, okay. My question, oh, shoot, now I forgot my question. What was it? Oh, what was the notification procedure on this?
It was standard procedure.
We
use the same procedure all the time. It's based on the size of the lot. And in this case, since it's a CUP, it would be based on the size of the original notification area, which, looking at that CUP, was probably 500 feet. I don't know if Dave has the file with him to look, but, I mean, it was, the procedure was followed correctly.
Here's where I live. Let's see if I can get the mouse going. right over here. See, probably these people over here, I think there was like a 200-foot barrier boundary, maybe 500. So when you look at the scope of our neighborhood, you know, not the whole neighborhood is not affected by this. You're probably like 50, 60 people within that 500 feet. So our board kind of did us an injustice by not reaching out to us when they voted in favor. And how many of them were living in the impacted zone itself, so.
And follow-up question.
Okay, Mr. Florence? You have a question?
Is this comparable to the buildings that just been put up there in that area now?
They're further away if they are.
Well, you know, you got that hospital that's.
The Optilife, yeah, the hospital, no, that's a lower profile. Probably the biggest building is the Optilife building, which is probably another, well, it's another lot. It's like a lot and a half where it's been built. Like I'm saying, I think they have a great idea, a great business model to develop their product. I just don't think this is the right place for it. There's other places that they can buy lots within a mile in either direction that are readily available. Up by the AMC theaters, which is less than a mile, there's a whole industrial park area up there, and over there, 21st and Greenwich Road in the southeast quadrant.
Mr. Joe Johnson, do you have another question?
I was just going to ask him, is the Opulite building one lot away?
It's down, let's see, it's right in this lot, I think, right here.
What's in the lot behind them, between you?
Nothing. There's 2 ponds there, which the city needs to take care of, that need to be aerated. It's like a mosquito pit. So, that doesn't have anything to do with this, but this lot back here is vacant, the lot right in here.
Thank you.
Mr. Richardson?
So just to clarify, your main objection here is to the size of the building?
Well, gentleman over here
No,
made some valid points.
Yeah, but.
Probably so.
Your
The
objection
size of
is
it's just,
not
the
the
scale
use.
is just huge.
not the use, but the size of the building.
Well, I haven't really thought much about the use. There's a whole bunch of storage facilities all up where we live. I mean, I don't know. We didn't really. I don't really notice them. But they're not this type of model. And also the type of material they use on the outside. One of the things that when we met last, I didn't see, you had some revision of your plans, and I didn't see an aerial view. It looked like there was some pitching going on, and I didn't know how that would look.
Sir, you'll have to wait till rebuttal sorry.
Sorry, that's okay. He can,
Well, listen, everything's recorded, and so if you're not at a speaker, then
Right,
we'll have a
yeah.
record of it.
All right.
Any other questions from the commission? Thank you, Kenny.
I think people would feel more comfortable if they got the scale of what we're really dealing with. You say, well, it's 300 feet long, and where you think of a football field, a lot of people can't imagine 35 foot tall or 45 feet or 170 feet. This is something that we're going to have to live with, and I don't know if we get a more comfortable they make us feel, the better off we're going to be. And they've done a good job.
Kenny, I have to get on to the next
All right.
presenter from the audience. Thank you. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay, seeing none, I will bring it back to the applicant agent for rebuttal. And you will have 2 minutes.
I'll go through these quickly, try to, so we can cover all the points, and I appreciate the compliments. We have tried to work, and hopefully y'all have seen that. On the confusion at the beginning, we reached out to the board directly, not because we were required to. It's just the way we like to do things, and so that's why not everybody got notices. That's how we do it in most markets, is figure out who's in the board. And we thought that information would get out. We knew it would in the public notice process, but that's where the confusion there. The process we did perfectly It's just we did one extra step. The OptiLife building is about 35 feet tall, and it is, I don't know the exact size of that building, but the floor plate is a little bit smaller than ours, but not very much, to give you an idea of the buildings that are around there. As far as, so directly behind the OptiLife is not ponds, it's actually a pad there. The ponds are more to the northeast, and so that parcel could become something there, right behind OptiLife. As far as the use definition goes, we have some language that's limited access, climate control, self-storage, so that if something happened, nobody can come and do outside storage. I can see why the residents wouldn't want that, and we're happy to limit that as part of our use. Crime, on crime, we will not draw any crime. I'll tell you that. I don't know if I can't document it and give you studies. I will tell you that our building is completely contained. There is no outside access to storage there, so everything is done internally. We have security cameras both inside and outside. We will not draw crime. It's just not the business plan that we have. Extra space storage also will be operating this one. Does it get through here? As far, in the last one, so I heard somewhere that we had cut some corners. I don't believe we've cut corners. We've tried to really be above board. We try to do that everywhere we go. We just feel that's the way you do business. So.
Mr. Glenn, you're out of time. Questions from the commission? Mr. Foster?
Just, I've got a staff question and a question related to your landscape plan. One of the selections there, the shingle oak, is probably one of the slowest growing oaks you can get. So you might want to further your discussion on your tree selection. The other issue is over time, it's going to develop a very broad crown. So again, you might want to look at that carefully relative to its impact on the neighbors and the shading and so forth. There's other trees a little bit more vertical in character, I think might be better. My second question is a staff question. Scott, what would be the zoning setback on this, on the north property line?
I think the north property line would be like 20 feet, but there is a restriction on the plat that it had to be 40 feet.
That's what I wanted to double check. So the applicant here, I think if I read their drawing right, I think they're in the 45 to 46 foot range as a
Yes.
setback?
Yes.
Okay.
The building will be further away from the north wall than what they're required to by the plat.
And other uses, regardless whether it's this use or another, it can go to this 35-foot height, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Florence, then I'll get Mr. Blick.
Just one point of clarification, wasn't the one out west adjacent to some residential property?
Yes, and I was going to address that. The one at 13th and Mays is in the Brant property CUP. It was adjacent to a CUP to the south that had a lot of residential uses as well as residential uses to the west. I think what the intention, what Mr. Glenn was trying to say was there was no organized board for them to contact when that project started. It's not that they didn't have residential neighbors, they did. It's just they didn't have an organized board to contact ahead of time.
I can clarify. I provided them the contact we have for that board, and it was no good.
Osmeyer, you have a question?
I just had a question. Did you say it was staffed at
Mr.
certain
Richardson.
hours?
Yeah. So it'll be manned from 8:30 to 5:30, and access is 6:30 to 7 to 10. So that's, and
Thank
once
you.
again, Extra Space, which is a national operator, there actually is one here, will be operating all of our stores, and so they will be branded Extra Space.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Richardson?
I have a question for Dave. Dave, is multifamily an allowed use in this CUP?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
I think it's all commercial.
From what I've seen and heard, sounds like the applicant's doing due diligence with the neighborhood and trying to work with them. Based off the zoning and being inside and the growth that's happening in the area, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve per staff's recommendations.
Second. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Blick, a second by Mrs. Miles. Discussion. Any discussion? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries 12, and we have 12, 0, and 2 abstentions. All right, moving on to agenda item number 7, case number ZON 2019-00007. And looks like we have Philip up to present.
Yes, good afternoon again. Philip Zievenbergen, Associate Planner, Planning Staff. We have a zone request here to change the zoning classification of a portion of a property that's currently zoned SF5. The applicant is requesting a TF3 zoning to allow the construction of duplexes on a property that's located along South Webb Road, about a quarter-mile north of East Pawnee, as you can see here. According to the site plan that the applicant submitted, you can see here within the pink outline zone is the portion of the property they're looking to zone TF3. Their plan is to develop 29 lots with duplexes, which would equate to about 58 dwelling units. Though it is not a part of this, and I believe the agent is here and he can clarify, within the SF5 zoning, I believe these lots that are around the outside would most likely be developed as single-family homes. Around the area is primarily single-family residential. Let me get back to my zoning map here. There is some TF3 zoning around. There are duplexes here to the south. The Maple Shade subdivision up here with some patio homes, and to the west there's single-family residential and single-family residential to the east. This is a Sedgwick County maintenance location to the south of the property. And on the property itself, there is an existing church here, which the church actually owns this property, and they're looking to be the ones to develop it as well. I've got some pictures from around the site. It is currently vacant, as you can see. This is looking east. There's actually a good tree buffer pretty much all around the site. This is looking to the north. This is that Maple Shade subdivision. This is looking to the south, kind of towards the Sedgwick County maintenance facility. To the slightly east would be where those duplexes are, but there's a berm and you really can't see them from the site. And this is looking to the west. This is the existing church building. Webb Road is right here, and you can see the single-family homes across the way. Webb Road is a fully improved arterial road. All municipal services are nearby, though they would have to be extended to serve this lot. And this location is outside the established central area. However, it is a good example of infill development. With that, staff is recommending approval of this case, and I can stand for any questions.
Okay, questions from the commission. Mr. Daly.
Will be the access route to this piece of property?
Good question. Here on the site plan, you can see they have their access road coming off of South Webb Road. It'd be just north of the church property. You would have this single road here, and then the access road to the duplexes would be down here in the cul-de-sac. The road would continue into a cul-de-sac here on the east side of the property for the other lots that may be developed.
The questions from the commission. Okay, thank you, Philip. If agent or applicant could please step forward, state your name and address, and you know the gig. You'll have 10 minutes.
Good afternoon. Will Clevenger with Garver here on behalf of the applicant. First off, I just would like to say that we think this is a great location for blending in with the neighborhood, being that this requested zone change area would be adjacent to the county building, the county yard, I should say, to the south, and then also mostly next to the existing two-family residential to the south. And then by doing this site plan the way we have, that allows for single-family development around the north and east sides. That way they abut next to the existing single-family area. I do understand that there's probably been some concern from some of the neighbors about drainage and about some of the utility infrastructure, and that is something that we'll definitely want to accommodate when we get to the plating phase, but not right now at the zone change. We're in agreement with staff comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the commission? Looks like we have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? If you'll step forward to the podium, state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Lauren Martindale. I live at 2022 South Webb Road, which is in the Maple Shade area. Maple Shade is a community of about 66 homes, single-family residences. And our concern is stormwater runoff. Currently, stormwater is pretty much retained by this vacant piece of property. And we feel that when the community is developed over there with houses, streets, driveways, patio, slabs and that sort of thing, that there's going to be a lot of stormwater runoff. Their area is higher than ours. We are just to the north of where this area right here. And this area over here is higher than our community. So water is going to be, stormwater is going to be directed this direction and then towards Webb Road. I notice there's a couple of ponds up here, but they're also at the high end of this property. So we would like to be assured that the developer has a good hydrologist who's developed the plan for the stormwater runoff, and that the city or the county get involved in making sure that that works and that the construction of those of that stormwater runoff is controlled. That's any questions? I'll take questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman.
Yes.
Are you okay with the duplex zoning that they're asking for?
No, well, yeah, as long as that, no, we're mostly concerned with the stormwater and
Because today we're just looking at the zoning. We're not looking at the hydrology of the site. That'll come with the plat.
Okay. Okay.
Other questions from the commission? Mr. McKay?
I have a question, I got a comment. Sir, you realize that when they plat this property, they'll have to have an approved drainage plan that'll take care of probably what you're talking about. I mean, they're just not gonna willy-nilly let it go do it. They will have an approved drainage plan by the city.
Okay, well, that would satisfy our needs.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? If you'll step forward to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. I need one of those buttons, those easy buttons. Step forward, state your name.
My name is Il-Sik Hong, go by Ike. I'm a church member of that church over there. We moved there 2 summers ago. As other gentleman just mentioned, I don't know how to use these things.
Use the arrows up or down.
Is this? Yeah, okay, that's okay. Can you show me the contour? Okay, that's good. This is a church building, and the south of the church is the parking lot and the entrance right here. As you see, all this contour from the this area here is a drain to the church to the Webb Road. And I have a big problem right here with the water. Every time when it rains, we have a big gully right here. I really like to hear or see what is your drainage plan is, because see where this go.
It just disappears.
Oh, okay. all this backyard will be drained right into our church lot. I really concerned that. And then, what is your plan to screen between our church lot to your backyard? That's my main concern.
Questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay, agent and applicant, if you would like to step forward. And of course, you have 2 minutes rebuttal.
Again, Will Clevenger with Garver here on behalf of the applicant. As you can see on the east side of the property, we know for a fact that we're going to have drainage detention at these two low points. There is the possibility of needing to have another drainage detention over on the west end. We won't know that until we get to the point of surveying the property for platting, but we definitely cannot increase the drainage from what's happening today versus what gets developed. So we will have to make sure that we capture that excess runoff. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Foster.
Well, I'm trying to figure out on the zoning, is this, what's the church zoned as?
I believe it is also SF5.
Okay, so there would be no buffering requirement then between the two uses, is that correct?
Actually, were the church to be built second, the church would have to screen from residential use.
So go in this direction, there's not a buffering requirement?
That's correct.
All right, okay.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. I will bring it back to the commission for action, and Mr. McKay has his finger up.
I can make a motion to approve subject to staff comments.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. McKay and a second by Mr. Klossmeyer. Any discussion? Mr. Foster?
I've asked this before, but what is the mechanism so that the folks that have brought up the drainage issue can make sure and participate in the plat?
No, the notification for a plat is a sign posted on the property prior to the hearing.
If they wanted to make sure they were contacted, who should they contact at staff? Just to make sure they're in the loop when the plat comes in.
We can make a note in the file if they've signed in on the sheet to notify them of the plat.
I just want to make sure the folks from the audience make sure they should get signed up there if you do want to see notification about the plat. Okay, thank you.
Good thought, Dave.
Any other questions from the commission? Any other discussion from the commission? I guess I should have said. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 13-0. All right, moving on to agenda item number 8. Looks like Mary's going to present to us on the Northeast Heights Neighborhood Comprehensive Plan Amendment.
I don't want to be.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mary Hunt, planning staff. Back in the fall of 2018, the residents of the Northeast Heights Neighborhood Association began inviting staff to their monthly meetings. Their concern centered on the possible intrusion of commercial development on their neighborhood. And so subsequently, after several meetings, we put together a series of 5 policies that helped address this. And they basically center on that we prefer residential development to stay as it is, that we would discourage stripped out commercial development in their neighborhood. And then we put together on policy number 3 a series of suggested development standards. They're not required, of course, but that we believed that they would help address their concerns regarding this, and including things to do with buffering and lighting and what monument signs should look like and the like. So we met with the DAB earlier this week. They unanimously approved this, as had the Neighborhood Association group from some months ago, and it's before you today.
Any questions for Mary from the commission? Mr. Blick.
Mary, I know that we had, and it's kind of hard to see in this map. I know we had a property that they were trying to get a commercial property. I think it was at 21st and Oliver. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So this would kind of help the neighborhood protect that going to a commercial or something like that. Is that basically it?
Well, it established maybe some standards that should it go that way,
Okay.
that it could be more compatible with the residential neighborhoods right by it. But of course, it applies to the entire 1 square mile area, not just that corner. It's just that intersection, the properties located right there, where we had rezoning applications in the past.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Other questions from the commission? Mr. Foster?
Just as a bookkeeping matter, how will this amendment be kept track of so that we'll,
How is what?
how will it be kept track of over time so to make sure it goes along with the investments plan?
The investment, I'm sorry, the
The
investment
community
plan?
investments plan. How do we know?
Oh,
How's it going to attach itself to it?
I guess I'm not understanding your question.
The amendment that you adopt is adopted as what we call an element of the plan. And if you look at the overall plan, there's an appendix in there that lists the, 15 or so other plans that are elements of that plan, and that's how you keep track of it. And then you have to go find that other document and review it.
Questions?
What type of action are you looking for?
Got a public hearing first.
Yeah, we have to go to the public for comment. Any other questions from John? Mr. Daly?
John's good enough. Is this plan saying there will not be commercial development at the corner there, the northwest corner of 21st and Oliver?
It does not say that. It says that retaining residential development is encouraged and that commercial development in a strip, like a strip mall type development, is discouraged. It doesn't mean you can't do one or the other. This is still private property. Anyone can come in and ask to rezone their property anytime. That's just the property rights that they hold.
So if it's just one office, it isn't a strip mall then?
That's true.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Mary from the commission? If not, is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Step forward, state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Lonnie Barnes. I stay at 2924 North Terrace here in Wichita, Kansas. And so, guys, I know we're here to decide policy and what we're going to say in here. I don't know if you can see this, but you can see the colors pretty much. You see the blue and the not so blue. So what this is across here is Oliver. This down here is Central. This is 21st. This is WSU setting right here. From Oliver down to right here is the bypass. This is 17th Street on the other side of Wichita State, 13th Street down here to the bypass, 9th Street down to the bypass. All this blue is coded in here as opportunity zones for outside investors to come and invest into this property area to improvement. Part of that's the encouragement of your revitalization and all of this to encourage all this other area. This primary area in here that's not, this is your Hillside, Oliver, Hillside, Grove, and then coming down to the bypass over to 9th. Now, this sets all of this, much more of it sets into your revitalization and infill projects in here, but a little encouragement for this area. And when I go to this direction, 29th Street over here is here, and this is 21st Street down to the bypass. This is the section that we're talking about on that corner, up to that one corner. Now, the important part about this corner is this, is that in our development plan you've had from 95 to and revisit in 2005, 10, and 2013, there's no incentives in the core of these areas of 17th, 13th, going across Grove. All those have been going around and everything else and adjacent to it. Now, guys, you're not going to get revitalization started in one of these without starting it out on the perimeters. And this has been our catalyst, Wichita State University, for a lot of that. And when you start stifling down what can come along this area, and this is that mile goes over, that's almost to 29th Street, coming back down the hillside. There's not much in there. This big portion right here is graveyard. You got some spots along here. 21st Street coming down here, it stops about there, and then you got more graveyard going this way. And then down here, you got open plats. So the thing is, guys, when you start putting too many restrictions in here, when we say the restrictions are things that we would like to see in there and the things we don't want to see, this restriction says you can't have grocery stores, you can't have pharmacies, you can't have those creature features that we all have to go and travel, but people will come. But you're going to add a lot of more residential with apartments you've approved over here, some other places along there. So I just say with the policy, be careful of what you say we can and can't have that we all want that's going to help vitalize and bring those features to it. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Questions from the commission? No? You have a question for staff? Go ahead. Which staff?
Mary,
Mary?
is any part of this square mile in the opportunity zone?
Oh, I can't answer that, but I bet it is. I get it. I don't know.
I think probably ought to be looked at as something we consider when we do these neighborhood plans.
Sure.
I don't know that anybody knows what effect these opportunity zones are going to have yet. They're getting a lot of press around the country and articles about what might happen for redevelopment. I think he makes a good point. I don't know, it probably changes the neighborhood's mind, but it might be well to, and I'm not sure when we hear any of these cases that perhaps part of the staff background report ought to include information about whether or not these are in opportunity zones. Maybe that doesn't change anything, but it would be good to know that. I think it might bring more pressure for redevelopment, perhaps. And, maybe even at some point, a little education session for us on opportunity zones and what has to go on there in order to make those work. It has to do with deferred tax benefits, but I don't know what else it comes along with that. So, thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay. If you'll step forward, state your name and address, and again, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, everybody. I know you're tired and want to get on with this. My name is Steve Falke. I'm at 3 Crestview Lakes Estates. Friends with Lonnie Barnes, very active in the neighborhood. I can definitely understand his concerns for business development or just development in general that brings activity. But we can see all of that going on with WSU. And this whole idea of this policy was brought up not necessarily as a matter of protection as much as it is a matter of discussion. We fully recognize that there's properties all within this mile, and for some reason people seem to be fixated on that corner at 21st and Oliver. Probably just because that's the corner that's had the most activity in the past few years, but there are several lots along Hillside between 21st and 29th that have been vacated or are sitting vacant and need to be developed as well. And there's also several pockets of infill that need to happen within this square mile. that we wanted to, the desire here with Mary's help, and she's been extremely helpful, the desire here was to basically set some or reinforce some existing neighborhood plan ideas and concepts that were already in place, so that when this happens and when WSU continues to develop, as they hopefully will, that we can have some constructive discussion and, like I said, identify should there be some opportunity zones in this particular mile, which I don't think there are at the moment. But anyway, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? She's shaking her head no. All right, I will bring it back to the commission for action. Mr. Warren.
Start the discussion off here because I think this is bad policy. I agree with Mr. Barnes here. Even though this doesn't preclude a zone change, once you set it down in a policy, it becomes the pattern that people look at and says, well, this was decided, we therefore need to follow this discussion. I can live with policy number 3, number 4, and number 5 in terms of safety provisions and that lessen the impact between a commercial development and a residential neighborhood. I have no problem with coming up with buffer zones, lighting issues, doing anything that I can to lessen the impact that a commercial property, is going to have on the existing neighborhoods. But this is, that intersection is a commercial intersection. It has become a commercial intersection. It's already on 3 sides of that intersection are commercial, and to single out those 3 lots as something that should remain residential makes no sense to me. That is a poor use of that property, and there are ways to let that go into a commercial development and still buffer that business from the neighborhoods that are in there. So if we were to adopt this policy, I would want to eliminate policy number 1 and number 2 from this policy, or in absence of that, eliminate the 3 lots at the corner of Oliver and 21st Street that are in there, that are checkered right now. If you look at the map, you can see a checkered area. Eliminate those lots from this particular policy, and then allow the policy to go through the rest of it. So if it goes as it is, I will vote against the recommendation. I would move, I guess I would like, for those of you that understand where I'm coming from and are in agreement, because I'm sure that there are those that are disagreement with me, would you prefer to eliminate policy 1 and 2, or would you prefer to eliminate the lots, those 3 lots at the corner of 21st and Oliver from?
I would say eliminate 1 and 2.
Okay. I would move to approve the policy, striking policy number 1 and number 2 on page 2 of the presentation that we have before us.
I second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Warren. I have a second by Mr. Klossmeyer. Discussion. Mr. Foster.
That corner, if you go southeast of there, it's a church. And then if you go south of there, it transitions to cemetery uses. And so I'm a little hard pressed. To me, the intensity is the northeast corner only at this point, with it's up in the air what's going to happen at the southwest corner. So I'm not fully on board that it's all commercial.
Mr. Joe Johnson.
Mr. Warren, can you explain your alternate solution that you were talking about? What would eliminating those 3 lots do? Just leave it all open?
That would eliminate these policies from applying to those, which means that we would not be saying that we recommend that they remain residential.
So if we had a zoning request that came up, we'd just look at it?
We would just look at it, yeah. We wouldn't change the zoning. It would look at this as we would look any other lot anywhere else in the city. It would, the rules that apply to Hillside and 21st or Woodlawn and 21st would apply to this.
I like that suggestion better, but
I would be willing to change my change my motion to eliminate those lots from that so that it would be treated as all others. Like I said, either one of those, but I just think that this is an undue imposition on the property owner of that particular corner.
Mr. Klossmeyer, do you agree with that
I'd
amendment?
agree with that.
Okay,
I
Mr.
would withdraw my motion.
Just amend it.
I'll amend my motion to, instead of eliminating policies 1 and 2 from the overall area, but eliminate the 3 designated checkered lots at the corner of 21st and Oliver from the policy.
Agree.
You agree with that, Mr. Klossmeyer? Okay, I have Mr. Daly. Now,
I was going to say I agreed with the first, the first one, eliminating 1 and 2, so. Looks like it's
Richardson?
already been changed.
Well, I'm sympathetic to what he's saying, but we're kind of off here in the, sort of in the weeds. We just talked about a comprehensive plan on South Broadway, and it speaks to a lot of areas, I'm sure, that we've already approved here at this body, and we're getting into looking at specific lots. And actually, this plan speaks to those lots and simply says it's encouraged that they be developed as one rather than separately. And this whole thing talks about encouraging various things. It doesn't eliminate anything. This is strictly advisory, and I think we set a precedent here that says we're going to talk about individual lots when we look at neighborhood plans here, and for that reason I wouldn't support this. I think it's off in an area that doesn't make sense to me at this level of detail, because this is not a document that is imperative about what zoning can and cannot be done. Those requests are always open. We just heard one on South Broadway that is the same issue here, where we had probably approved it as recommending against car lots. I assume that plan, Mary, came through this board as well. And so we have all kinds of things in these plans that are recommendations that come back and get looked at in detail should those develop. And should they develop, I'm sure that you would bring to us what the desires of the neighborhood are with regards to those lots, and we could consider them at that time.
Mr. Foster.
Just follow up on that, the conditional use case we did have, the result of having that plan in place and the information brought to us is it facilitated the discussion. And I think it helped craft the final decision into a better decision. So I would not support the motion.
Any other discussion? Okay. Mr. Bill Johnson?
I want to get on my soapbox a little bit. Developing anything, we get to make the decisions in here, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. We had a case about a storage building, which storage building, that's a wide term. You had an applicant that went in front of the neighborhood, that redesigned the facility, and it still give an opportunity for neighbors to come in and even pick it apart. So I think the less things we think we're going to iron out, we're better off to leave alone and decide in here.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
No.
Aye.
Okay, let me see a show of hands for those in favor. Okay, and then those opposed? Okay, motion fails with a vote of 6-6.
As such, I'd make a motion to approve, subject to the staff comments.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Richardson, second by Mr. Hartman. Other discussion?
There's parliamentary fun here. I
Are you
go back to
gonna
my
challenge
orig,
me?
I go back to my original motion and make a substitute motion to eliminate policy 1 and policy 2 from the overall policy.
Second?
All right. I have a motion, then I have a substitute motion by Mr. Warren with a second by Mr. Daly. Other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the substitute motion, say aye, or raise your hand. Yeah, that'd be good.
Substitute.
This is for the substitute. Got it?
That's right.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so motion carries 8-4. Okay, and with that, we are adjourned.